Hey guys, what's up? I hope your week has been off to a beautiful start. We have a very special business orientated episode coming to you today. We are hopping on to the back end of the entertainment industry. It has been a hot minute since I've had someone who works in music that is not an artist themselves on the podcast. So I'm really excited for this. I've always wanted to have someone on who understands entertainment law, how to take care of your own royalties, how to get money from labels, how to deal with publishing, how to protect yourself. And we cover all of that in this episode. Adam Freedman is the principal attorney at the law office of Adam C. Freedman, and he specializes in entertainment, intellectual property, and corporate law-related matters. Oh my gosh, we are about to get into it. He represents clients throughout the entertainment industry, including musicians like Jesse, Subtronics, like Bogey T, record labels like Dome of Doom, music producers, videographers, filmmakers, entrepreneurs, and many, many more. He really lays it all down on the line. I feel like I just grilled him with questions for an hour and 15 minutes, and he answered all of them to a T. So if you are listening and you are an artist, or you are an A&R, or you are a manager, or you are an agent, or you are someone who does not work in music but wants to know what it's all about and how to navigate the back end, the front end, and everything in between, this is the episode for you to tune into. Again, if you love what we do here at the Lizzie Jane Podcast, please subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, share the episode, tell your friends about it, because we are just ramping up here in 2024. I'm so excited for this episode and some of the episodes that are coming in the near future. Keep it locked in. Follow us at the Lizzie Jane Podcast on all social media, and let's hop into it. You are tuning into my podcast with special guest Adam Freedman. Welcome back to the Lizzie Jane Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me to hop onto the business-orientated side of things in the entertainment industry and in dance music in general. Adam Freedman is joining me today. Adam, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I know we've been kind of talking back and forth about this for a while, and I remember you originally put out a tweet. That's how I kind of came across your page to begin with, because I remember at a point in time I was dealing with something way in the past, and I was looking for help on how to deal with a label, and somebody had forwarded me your page and said he puts a lot of great free information on here. And then I saw that you were looking to go on a podcast and speak, and I'm really glad that we could make this work out, because I know on both sides of the table, art and business don't often lie in the same sentence, but at the end of the day, it is a business. And whether you're an elementary project or you're someone like a Subtronics or a Tiesto, you have a team of people you employ, and you deal with lots and lots of money coming in and going out. And there's a reason that, you always see the quote unquote artist or pop star getting taken advantage of, because they simply aren't aware or educated on certain things that should be happening in the background of their career and their music. Just for listeners kind of coming into this conversation, we're going to kind of get a little bit technical today. Could you give me a little bit of a background just on who you are, what your law firm entails, and some of the clients that you work with now or have worked with and advised in the past?
Definitely. So yeah, growing up, I've had every job in the music industry. I started off playing in bands of my own. I did the whole struggle tour thing myself. Then went to law school, like kind of not knowing what I was going to do with my life. And then a guy in my class had the idea of putting on a concert. So we just did that. Went okay. We kept doing it. Met a lot of people through that. Got into artist management just while I was in law school. Then I graduated, moved up to New York, and I got a job at an entertainment law firm that did TV, film, and theater industry work. And then after a little bit, I went back to the network of artists that I met through the management stuff. I told them I'm a lawyer now. I can actually help a lot of people, and a lot of them didn't have their stuff together whatsoever, and they became my first clients.
I love it. Oh my gosh. And I know so who are some of the people in dance music that you work with currently and advise currently? Because I know you work with people like at all different levels of their journey and career.
Definitely. Yeah. Some clients you named, Subtronics is a client. Space Yacht, the promoters from LA are clients. A lot of people at dubstep. Eliminate is a client. I just helped him do the paperwork for his album that just came out.
I love it. And I think you also, do you do stuff with Wiley from Dome of Doom?
Yep. I'm actually rapping Dome of Doom right now. Oh my God.
So my EP is coming out on Dome of Doom. So I actually just went through a whole contract that I think Wiley was like, yeah, Adam is helping me with this. And we were on the phone and I was like, oh, I'm having him on my podcast. That's so dope. But I mean, there's so many ways. I feel like signing a piece of paper, especially from you've been in those shoes. I mean, I was in a band before this, did the whole struggling band thing, understanding that splitting what a DJ would get paid, half of what a DJ would get paid between 4 people and traveling and being on the road. And I was much younger, but looking into like the electronic dance music scope, it allows you to be a bit more profitable and have a little bit more control over your career and your destiny and have the things sit on your shoulders and be able to like direct a team. But I think more than most of us, it's always a long journey. I mean, you look at someone like Jesse, like Subtronics, or like Nate, Eliminate, and for how long they've been doing this and for how long they've pursued honing their craft and building this community and kind of hopping the levels of tiers from a support act to a headliner and everything that every artist goes through in their own right. I think putting just my own perspective of it, when certain opportunities are offered to you and you've sacrificed so much time and you've put in so much work and it may be that opportunity you were hoping for. Let's say it's a label deal or a deal with an agency or a deal for a tour. You often throw like the common sense in your mind out the window and you go, oh my God, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. Like this is what I've been fighting for. This is a stepping stone to X, Y, and Z. I'm just going to sign the damn paper and I'm just not going to think about it. So I guess in your terms, like why first off would an artist be in the lane to get a lawyer? And when would you advise certain things are happening in their career that deems they are ready for someone on the legal side to step in?
Definitely. I think what you just illustrated there is such a common mentality amongst artists in general. That they kind of like when you get your first few deals, you kind of try to think of any way to make it happen rather than looking for any red flags to not make it happen. So I guess as a non-artist, I mean, maybe I don't understand that. I think everyone should just pay attention to their business because it's their life. It's not their manager's life. It's not their lawyer's life. It's their lives out there. And then to your other question of like, at what point are you ready for a lawyer? I guess I would say ultimately if you have enough money, if you're making enough money to afford a lawyer, because if you're not making money yet, get out there, put your music out there, take the show, get on the label. You're probably not going to make an expensive decision. But if someone's offering you a multi-year deal, it's definitely worth getting another set of eyes on it. But yeah, otherwise, unless someone's offering you like an advance along with signing one of your songs or something, yeah, maybe you don't need a lawyer until you are just making enough money throughout all of your business.
Absolutely. And I think it takes like a long time. Like I'm not even at that place where I'm going to turn around and say, oh, I have an extra $5,000 for a lawyer. Or, oh, I have an extra XK for a lawyer. And I think that's what is nice about certain management companies and agencies is they do have these lawyers on retainer, but it's not always for the artist's interest. It's for like the company as a whole's interest, like advances, which is pretty much when you get to a certain point, if you're speaking with a label or you're speaking with a distributor and you're bringing them an album or you're bringing them an EP or you're saying, hey, here's this and I want to do X amount of singles with you, but we want to make a music video and we want this amount of marketing or simply, hey, I have no fucking money. I need an advance and we're going to do this in, in exchange for the music or my back catalog or any of that. Like, let's just like hop in. Because I feel like advances are, correct me if I'm wrong, essentially a bank loan.
It's a bank loan, but you also you don't owe it to them. Anything that's left unpaid, you don't have to pay it back. So it just depends on the situation.
Like Les Mis terms for the world of labels and like what you oversee. I would love to know certain situations that you have found yourself in and certain mistakes, obviously, without naming names, artists have made in the early days of their career when they're starting to see that momentum. Maybe they've signed with an agency, they're starting to tour, and they're actually starting to see real money kind of come under the table. Maybe it is through touring or it is through a label. And obviously now more than ever, it is difficult to make money off of your music, but there are ways in publishing and sync deals and all of this stuff to do it. But I feel like in the dance music world, our minds are so touring, and not like, let's open our mind to the skill set in which the worlds that our music can live in, whether it's video games or commercials or Netflix or et cetera, et cetera.
The first thing I would look into if I was an artist who was offered like a label deal to sign my EP or my single for like a typical, usually with these smaller labels, it's the 50-50 net profit split. But like, who's actually running that label? Because a lot of people, like, especially these artist run labels, is literally the artist and his or her manager. Two people. If they're on the road themselves, they may not answer your emails because they're just so busy being on the road, which is understandable in itself. So just make sure you're dealing with the right people. And then as far as other sort of mistakes, I guess it's hard to say what's a mistake in terms of signing one song or signing one EP. But I've also seen it like exclusivity deals where someone's asking for 3 projects and you're exclusive to them for the whole year, can't release on any other label, and then they lose out on opportunities. All things to think about.
And it's like the radius clause deal. It's like if some company comes in and offers you, 6 or 7 major festivals, but then you can't play another festival within 90 days back and forth, 200-mile radius. It's a very similar analogy. And I've definitely, do you see exclusivity deals happen in dance music a lot? I personally, within my scope of peers that are like big guys to people who are just starting out, I have not seen crazy exclusive deals aside from like your past Never Say Die artists, your disciple artists, like those guys really get roped in. But I feel like for the most part, like your average artist really is able to jump around if they don't like establish themselves with a crew, a Deadbeat or
That's exactly what I was thinking, like 6 to 10 years ago, maybe. Yeah, that was more common.
So how long have you been in law underneath the firm and then having your own company that now does, intellectual property, copyright, everything?
I've been a lawyer for 9 years now, and I've had my own practice for almost 7 years. The last firm and then on my own.
Did you make a jump because you saw a gap of what was not being represented? Or did you do this because you saw people getting taken advantage of? Like, I know we wanted to speak about how to find a lawyer and how not to get taken advantage of.
So in all honesty, I kind of made the jump out of necessity. I was working at a small firm. So if the people above me, if they were out of town or if they were too busy, there may not be any work for me. So instead of just chilling, that's when I started going back to that network that I had built and trying to start getting the clients on my own. So I was kind of in a blessed situation to be able to do that. But as far as which clients to go for, I mean, that was definitely a big thing. It's one, music I'm a fan of, and then 2, who's getting taken advantage of. And just even by the people who I knew personally, it seemed like nobody had their legal stuff together. Like, I was surprised how big of artists didn't have their legal stuff together at all.
Do you do like a deep dive when you take on a new client in a permanent capacity and you say like, hey, where's all your music? Where are they living on the labels? Like, are you registering your music properly with BMI and ASCAP and all of those different kind of sources to slowly bring in income, and like none of it's there? Or when you start working with a client, are you dealing with a case to case basis? Like, how do your interactions go?
So I guess that gets into more how do entertainment lawyers typically bill their clients.
Love that.
So
yes.
Yeah. So usually entertainment lawyers, including myself, bill hourly on an hourly basis. And then in which case it's probably more case to case. And if I was looking for more work, maybe I'd start looking into their publishing and see if their stuff is registered, things like that, bring it up to them. Or the other option is where the attorney takes a percentage, typically 5%, but that's 5% of everything.
Oh,
So,
okay. So that's like having you on retainer.
right. And probably for dance music artists where you don't need a lawyer for show related matters, really ever.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could probably carve that out and have the lawyer take the percentage of basically everything else.
Yeah. Of literally everything else, which is, I feel like until you reach a point where you're kind of like a well-oiled machine as an artist, you're not necessarily in a position where you need to have a lawyer on like speed dial, like 2, 3, 4. But I'm sure, do you just deal with dance electronic artists, or do you deal with artists outside of the electronic world as well?
My clients are all over the place. I guess dance music is a big group of my clients, and then the other biggest group is hip hop producers and artists.
So what's the duality there? Is it kind of the same deal across the board, or is it different per industry, per genre?
It's actually interesting how different
really
people act in each genre. Like in hip hop, a lot of people are signing smaller producers to them and kind of helping the smaller producers build, collaborate, things like that. That kind of doesn't exist in dance music.
Mm-mm.
Like it's either management, but you're never signing to like a bigger artist. Meanwhile, like Travis Scott has artists signed to him, things like that.
Yeah, I literally just saw your tweet before we came on here as I was like waiting for my computer to reload. You're like, how is someone who is a DJ or a producer managing another producer? Like, I feel like those lines get like so fuzzy sometimes. And in that like situation, is it a case where it's like, yo, like you're getting taken advantage of?
Not necessarily, because everyone goes in those situations with the best of intentions. But I'm pretty against those situations of like an artist signing to a bigger artist, producer signing to a bigger producer, because producer's busy with his own stuff going on. So why would they give you more attention? And then when are they going to let you get bigger than them? That's probably not going to happen either.
But that's like very transparently, I love the artist-led labels because I feel like they do have the power to platform new artists and give them a fan base and a community that's already been built off of a sole entity A-list act, which is dope. And we've seen artists come up underneath people like that. But there's always this question in my mind that's like, they're never going to let you be bigger than them. That's like what sits in the back of my mind is like, we can raise you up. And we've seen the situation time and time again where, you have a producer that's maybe, translating into from a A-list act to more of a legacy act, which legacy acts go on forever and they can still make their money, provide for their family, but they'll, start collaborating with newer, hotter producers or bring the new guys up with them. But it's kind of like, okay, but it helps everybody, which I think is dope because again, you're taking someone who doesn't have the market history, who doesn't have the fan base, who doesn't have the community, and you're putting them on. But what happens when you put them on so much that they're right here underneath you? And then what happens?
Yeah. I see those deals go poorly for all sorts of different reasons, especially say the smaller artist does really blow up. Saying it's even the best case scenario where the smaller artist ends up outshining the legacy act you were just talking about. Mm-hmm. They're still giving a legacy act a percentage of their money. Yeah. So they're going to start getting resentful because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And because it's like, now all of your music is signed to X label that has a touring back end that you've been put on every single label show, period. But it's again, built you. And then I feel like you either see them step away and they go on and they do their own thing after they've written out a contract or they've written out whatever, but they'll still be paying royalties or advance fees or whatever was in that deal initially to get them under the table. And then they go on and do their own thing, or they just stay there forever, which again, if you're making $10,000 a show and you're doing what you need to do and you're being smart with your things, like there is a level where it's like, okay, maybe you can step out of the box, look inward and say, okay, am I happy? We are sustaining. I think everybody's goals and journeys are different, but it's also, again, that muddiness and like slippery slope that's underneath the back end or, well, we've put you on. So now we're going to bring you to our festival, but we're only going to offer you $200 to play. And it's like, okay, you're paying to play. You're paying to be a part of this. And yeah, it looks cool. Your name's on the flyer, gold star. But at the end of the day, like, are you building your business? Are you setting yourself up for success long term? And again, it goes back to the opportunity versus like the commonsensical thing to do.
Yeah, that was so much game right there.
Yeah. And it's because I feel like I've been through it enough, and I've seen enough rotations of new artists come in, and I've experienced things on my own end where it's like, okay, I want to do this now, but long term, is it smart to take this offer with this event company that is so lowballed that now you're building off of something that like you can't even begin to think about making a profit, and understanding that, like, you know, looking at an average festival lineup, 75 to 80% of that talent budget is being spent on those 4, 5, 6 names that are bringing in between, you know, they can account for anything from 50,000 to 100,000 tickets. And then everyone else on the second billing, the third billing, the fourth billing is making, you know, maybe 5 to 10K. Maybe then you go to 1 to 3K, and then you go from like 250 to 500.
I would say that brings up a lot of the stuff or a lot of the issues that I run into is kind of artists not thinking about even what they want on their end. They kind of look to their management, look to their lawyers, like when you review the deal. I can't review the deal without knowing what you want it to look like. What sort of deal do you actually want there?
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's definitely, I think that's such a thing as well, because I have definitely been guilty in that situation where, especially when you're a newer, younger individual in this scene. I'm someone who used to think a festival just like popped out of a fucking magical box and it was there and no one worked on it and no one represented these artists and da-da-da. And when you start to see the other side of things, and again, that was, 5-6 years ago, when you start to understand the other side of things, I think it's really easy, especially if what you see in dance music happens so often, especially in the age of TikTok and virality. You get someone picked up who has no market history. They all of a sudden have a major team, a major agency behind them. And you kind of in the back of your mind go, well, they know better than me. They've been doing this longer. They're more educated. They're more informed. I just need to trust them. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're going to care about you the most. So taking the time to educate yourself and understand, like, I remember my mom when I was 5. What's your 6-month career goal? What's your 10-year goal? What's your 20-year goal? Like, having that in your mind as an artist is like so important, because you have to be able to like lay out to the people who you're paying what your goals are, or you're just going to run in circles or run up to down and then be unhappy and you're not able to speak about it because you didn't know how to elaborate it at the time. And I'm sure you ran into that a number of times.
Yeah, I was going to say in the best case, you still have to think about the manager's agenda. The manager gets paid their commission on how much money you make. So they're going to try to maximize how much money you make. They're going to say, take the upfront money every time. You should do this. You should do that. Mm-hmm. When it might not be the best move. So nobody should blindly trust their management. Everyone should be taking what their management advises them, run it through your own analysis. Is this really the right move?
Absolutely. And again, at the end of the day, like, I feel like I get it why people are agents. I get it why people are lawyers. Like, I understand why people aren't, at the end of the day, like, they love art and they care about the craft of it. And I think most agents I've met were like a DJ in their past life, or like involved, you were in a band, you probably did DJ stuff. Like, everyone loves it, but the back end is everyone's concerned about money except the artist most of the time. And especially in dance music, you see these people become touring mules where they eventually burn out and they run into the ground. But like, that's you. That's not affecting your manager. That's not affecting your agent. What's going to affect the agent and the manager is when you pick up the phone and you say, I'm sick. I'm burnt out. I have a substance problem. I have an alcohol problem. None of this shit was dealt with and I'm done. And then like the heartbeat goes like silent, like I feel like there's a shelf life on every career and everybody's journey is very different. And you have people who are super happy popping for 1 to 2 years and then disappearing, like we see ever so often. And then you have the people who are at the top of the game, who have been at the top of the game for the last decade and a half, and they're still here. And it's, it's understanding your goals and your tick points. And like, I feel like where a lawyer fits into that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is especially helping with the longevity, like things that I want to know things that you've started working with clients, like in the publishing world, in the sync world, like things that they weren't really taking advantage of that allows them not to be a touring mule, that allows them to have that income coming in where they don't necessarily have to be touring 365 days a year if they don't want to.
Yeah. Well, one option was, just speaking of Jesse, he did a publishing deal semi recently off the success of his song, started doing the number, started reaching a certain point, and yeah, people were interested in doing long-term deals with them. So that's one option, doing a pub deal, or getting involved in the sync world. Just I'm sure you guys have countless tracks just sitting on your computer that aren't doing anything. Mm-hmm. Put those in the library of tracks according to different moods and stuff, and people will definitely be interested in those sorts of things for video games and other sorts of uses like that.
What are the most common things that you typically handle in dance music, and like major things as someone who doesn't have a lawyer that they should be looking out for that could be a red flag or could be a green flag?
I guess number one is reviewing an artist management contract, from whether it's on behalf of the manager or the artist. If you're signing a multi-year deal, I figure it's worth spending $500 on a lawyer, because I just figure that's worth it. Mm-hmm. We help our clients sign their EPs and stuff over to labels. We've helped a few with publishing deals. People trademark their artist names, helped send cease and desist letters when people were making bootleg merch with their artist names and logos. Yeah, helping people clear their albums. Like Eliminate had a bunch of collabs with Flux Pavilion and tons of vocalists, stuff like that did all those contracts.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's such a thing. I sing, so I typically do most of the vocals on like my own EP, like dealing with Wiley. Wiley was like, so there's no samples to be cleared. So there's no vocalist that you worked with. And he's like, there's no co-writing credits for giving. I'm like, no. I'm like, no, it was me. So it makes it fucking easy. But in the world of dance music, where like most people aren't a vocalist, or like they want to do work with other people, that it's not just your voice on every single fucking track, there are negotiations and there are splits. And especially in a world of where, there's this, I talk to vocalists all the time that are, purely EDM, singer-songwriter, vocalists, and top liners. And they definitely have a call to action that's happened in the last few years where, they play an incredibly important part in the music as far as the hook and what people are actually attaching themselves to. That's like a bit of the pop world coming in.
In pop, like a pop singer would never expect to take a $500 buyout for their track. That would just never happen. But in dance music, that's commonplace.
It's so wild because it's so different. And exactly what you said with like hip hop, EDM, pop music, it all falls under entertainment, but like the like lingo is vastly, vastly, vastly different. When you see like an agreement from a label or, maybe an exclusivity agreement or something that you're dealing that does have splits and co-writing credits and X, Y, and Z, or maybe you're doing a fee or a buyout with an NDA, what are like the main points of like any kind of agreement, and how do you establish getting royalties? Like, how do you establish like what's my cut if this does go to publishing and it does get picked up and like just to make sure that you're covered on all bases? Because I feel like, again, oftentimes a label comes in and they're just like, I'll take care of it. And you don't think about it at all. And then you never see a dollar.
The main points to look out for are, how long are you giving them the rights for? Is it forever? Is it for 10 years? What cut are they taking? And who controls the rights to it? Like, do you have all the rights to give up, and just making sure everyone's getting their proper splits on your end?
Yeah, definitely. And then where does royalties come into play?
So you're thinking like, once I sign the contract, now how do I actually get paid?
Yes.
Right. Those are totally different.
Yes. Post-contract, post-song release. Now how do I get paid? What if other DJs are playing it in their sets? What if it's getting played at the gym?
First question, how to get paid like from the label, how to get paid your 50% of the master royalties. I guess that goes into like artist run labels, is a lot of them are not on top of it just because they just have so much going on. Those emails are just buried in their inboxes. Mm-hmm. It's usually up to you to follow up with them. Like, your contract will say you get paid usually like say every 6 months, but then it says like 60 days from the end of each 6-month period. Whenever you get a contract, put those days in your calendar. If you haven't, check your bank. If you haven't been paid by those days, hit up the label.
Yeah, it's like self-accountability. Like, you have to be on top of it. And I guess like there's no way in any world that like
an up and coming act should feel bad or should feel ashamed or should be scared if they're reaching out to X label that gave them X opportunity for their own money.
Right. I see that all the time. People just too scared to even send a follow-up email. Like, people reach out to me. They say, I put out this track. I haven't heard anything about it. I said, did you reach out to them? Did you ask them what's up? No. That's step one. Ask them what's up. And say someone really is like so annoyed with you that they're offended that you reached out to them. That is not someone you want to work with. That person's probably horrendous.
Horrendous. And I feel like you've probably seen more than me, like label nightmares.
But less so in terms of people being too scared to follow up. Like, in terms of issues with that.
I think about every song I've released and the labels I've done, compilations with, and not even singles or big pieces of art. Just like, hey, we're releasing on your compilation, but like, you're still entitled to see if that's made any money.
Yeah, you should not be afraid to reach out.
Once you've dealt with getting your money from the label, what if the label has done a publishing deal with this? What if you did it with Monster Cat and then all of a sudden it's in X video game or it's in Rocket League or it's in whatever.
A lot of these small labels, they ask for your publishing as well. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't include that. You shouldn't give them your publishing. You should give them the right.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Yeah, you shouldn't include it. And a lot of them will say, fine, we don't need it, but that's not typical to include.
What if the only way for you to get your song in this video game is based off the label's relationship that has priorly been a pipeline for 1 to 2, but the label's only incentive to get that on X video game is by taking part of your publishing?
Well, that's going to be the pitch by the label every time, for sure. So it kind of depends who you're dealing with. Yeah, it takes trust. And for people like that who for a fact have this long track record, it makes sense.
But not for just like a regular label that's like, hey, we've done nothing in the publishing world at all. Give me 50% of your publishing.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So when so-and-so started a label, do you want to sign a track to them? Don't give them your publishing.
Don't give them publishing. I know. Oh, that's painful. I'm someone who would definitely like trying to grow into my own, but like confrontation and like being very not blunt, but also not trying to bring like emotions into the conversation. I think it's a girl thing. And I think it's an artist thing.
It's an artist thing.
When you're like, have this like attachment to something that you've spent months on, years on, whatever, like something that means something dear to you in the record. It's like you have this attachment and emotional bedding to whatever happens with it. And then like you want the best thing to happen, but in leeway, you like turn a blind eye to these things that you shouldn't be turning a blind eye to. We've kind of had that conversation publishing through the label, but there's all of these different, organizations like BMI, like ASCAP, like where you can register your music and keep track of your catalog. Like, let's talk a little bit about that because that's something that I'm not informed on.
In every piece of music, there's technically 2 copyrights. There's the master recording and the underlying publishing, the underlying, like the songwriting. And then it kind of makes more sense in a pop situation where the owner of the song, of the master recording is one person or a label, and the owner of the songwriting could be a completely different person. How to get your publishing money, there's just a bunch of those different organizations you have to register the music on. There's ASCAP or BMI. You might have heard of like the Mechanical Licensing Collective. That's how you get mechanical royalties. That's just another kind of publishing royalties. So the other option besides going into BMI and trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to register all your songs yourself, is to sign with a publishing administration company, which is basically you sign with them for say like 2 or 3 years. They register your music in all those different places, and they just take a percentage just for those 2-3 years.
Okay. And then they like navigate everything for you, and they make sure that everything is being accounted for, everything's being facilitated correctly. It's kind of like having a lawyer on retainer for like 6 months and paying him 5% of everything.
Yeah, for that one area, yeah.
Yeah, for just the one area. And it's discography specific or song specific.
So you might have heard of Song Trust, songtrust.com. They're up for only the songs that you give them, but everything you give them is then subject to like a 1-year deal, I believe. Or a lot of people will ask for exclusivity over like 1 or 2 years because it still needs to be worth it on the company's end ultimately, especially considering how much money most dance music stuff is generating.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, have you, especially in like the bass predominant scene, you know, have you seen instances where this music does generate astronomical numbers off of just streaming? I personally don't think so, but I could be so wrong.
I mean, I don't think so either, but I think collectively, if you're putting out music, if you have 30 songs, they're all doing 100,000 streams, 200,000 streams, collectively, that's money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it definitely adds up. I totally see how over time, like if you've been releasing songs and albums and EPs for 5 years and then you transfer that whole thing, it will, I guess, add up in the
not many crossover smash hits in the bass music world.
No, you're not. Yeah, I feel like when you get into like electro, indie, and like house music and tech house and all that shit, you have a little bit more of a headroom for something to happen. Kind of, AT&T, Coca-Cola commercial. I mean, I saw like an example of Craze, Do It To It. Like all of a sudden, you're on Coca-Cola, you're on here, you're being played at the Super Bowl. Like all of that stuff technically falls under publishing, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
All those different uses. Yep.
Cool. You answered all the questions I had by just answering the publishing question. It's just such like, it's not hard to conceptualize and understand. I just think in the midst of doing everything else an artist does and everything that most teams are in the dance world are like focused and orientated around, which usually spawns from touring, it's something that falls to the wayside and people just forget about it. And that's, I'm sure, in situations where you've started to work with large clients and it's like, holy shit, like you haven't been collecting any of this or you haven't been, monitoring any of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get it being caught up in just the day to day of shows and so much going on, just even handling guest list requests every day. Like I fully understand how this stuff gets put to the wayside and it kind of takes them having to reach a certain point. It kind of takes them having to have that realization, like, oh my God, someone told me about this and I looked into it and oh my God, I need help.
There is this like stigma that the artist is not business orientated and business minded. And, they have like creative juices flowing through them. And there's definitely people that do have a business sense. I think there's definitely artists I've met and you can usually tell by how involved they are in their project, if they're making X, Y, and Z decisions, if it's, me talking to you as the artist instead of the manager talking to you as the manager of the client or whatever. Is there a reason why you think that is? Is it just because we're so busy? Is it just because our minds are facilitated differently, or is it just because
I think it's being creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because it's so rare that I see people really being on top of their stuff, even amongst my own clients. It's maybe like 20% of them are the ones who are really asking me questions and picking my brain about the deals that I send them. And yeah, I wish I guess that's been frustrating me and just personally a lot is like, what could we even do to fix that? Because even now there's so many podcasts out there, so many interviews out there, people telling their stories of how they got screwed over in this specific way. Here's exactly what happened. People keep getting screwed over the exact same way by the exact same people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
so is there even anything we could do?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Yeah, it's living in that circle that just constantly repeats itself with, the same mistakes. It's like, if you're not going to change the way you're approaching it differently, you're going to get the same result. And that's like, you can't do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That's insanity. And I think I feel like it really comes just from the basis of like early on artists, like taking the time to be educated. And are there things that you would maybe recommend for someone whose career is starting to take off? And again, it's like, let's talk about TikTok. Like, let's talk about these kids who, a lot of them, no, they're not overnight sensations, but some of them are. And some of them blew the fuck up without ever playing on CDJs, without ever doing a concert. And now they have an agent and a team and they're told to go and sing in front of 70,000 people when they've never stepped on stage before. Like, that is like a very scary situation in the back of my mind to be in. And I've seen people be in it and make horrendous mistakes based on broken promises and all of that stuff. But let's say your career is moving at a slow and steady marathon pace.
That's what I say. Let's talk about those people.
Yeah, let's talk about those people. What are some things that you think, myself included, could be conscientious about in approaching things when maybe we just have a manager and we don't have a lawyer or we don't have an agent quite yet?
I guess like some of my biggest piece of advice is that I like keep running into are artists will like hear one thing from like an Instagram clip, or someone tells them one thing, like even when you said at the very beginning, like advances, like, should you take one of those? Is that a good idea? You talk to one of your friends, they'll say, no, that's a terrible idea. Ask them why. Ask them, why do they say that? I bet a lot of them don't know, and they saw it on another Instagram clip themselves.
It's so true. It's so true.
And and then secondly, don't hesitate to like follow up with people and like ask for references, ask for real questions. Like if you think something's weird, it's probably weird. Like if you haven't heard back from the label in 6 months about your payment, something's probably going on. You should follow up with them. Some people reach out to me all the time. I'm supposed to get paid on this day. They said I'm gonna get paid on this day. It's not 3 months later. Should I follow up? Like, no, duh.
Yeah, no, duh. And it's like common sense things that, again, I think people kind of minimize themselves in the point of not wanting to be an inconvenience to the person or the label that gave them X opportunity.
I've been thinking about like the biggest thing I'm trying to change is I'm trying to have everybody like learn what their actual worth is in the industry. So you don't get gaslit into entering into some terrible deal because they tell you you'll be nothing without us type of thing.
And so, let's talk about that. Like from my own perspective and my opinion is like your worth and your value a lot in dance music is based on your market history, is based on how many tickets you can sell, how many tickets you can move, maybe translating into the amount of numbers you have via social media streams. But at the end of the day, half of those are bought. So it's like, I think it's relying on heavy data, and like the truest data to me is ticket sales and like where you're holding things on your shoulder from your experience. Like, what do you look at that deems an artist's worth to a situation where maybe you don't need to take that shit deal?
Well, I guess that gets more back to the conversation of whether I should sign to a label for a couple of years or sign to a bigger artist for a couple of years, something like that, or even a manager. Do I need this person right now? If I'm the 30th person on their roster, can I even get in touch with them? Will they be helpful to me? They'll pitch me on all sorts of stuff, but I ask them questions, but I try to ask them questions. They don't answer. That's not someone I should work with. And you shouldn't be too afraid to pick their brains. If they want to sign you to a multi-album deal, you shouldn't be afraid to have like a second phone call with them about this.
It's so true. You literally sound like my boyfriend. It makes me like, just like, it's like it's just a realistic thing. It's people want to sell you kind of this pipe dream that looks all pretty and looks all glamorous. And maybe it involves 40 tour dates and 2 EPs and, a big remix for an A-list act and da-da-da. But then you walk out of it making like negative money. And, maybe growing the socials a little bit, but you're tired and you're drained. And, it's definitely like you have to be a specific person to be built for that kind of situation over and over and over and over again.
Right. Especially because your team's going to tell you it's the right idea no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy too, because you think in the world of teams, it's like, whether it's one manager and one agent or one manager, or you have 5 managers and a day-to-day and 2 big agents that are, running your shit and a lawyer. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it really comes on to you and what you want for your project. And you have to take any offer or proposition or publishing deal, split deal, whatever, and say like, is this the best for me? And it's hard sometimes when it's such again, the end of the day, it's a business driven by money that has a bottom line. And is there a return on this investment? Is there a return on this advance fee? Like, are we making the right financial decisions when all you want to think about is like, I'm trying to build a community and grow my art and play shows, but you have to live at the same time. I mean, how many producers do you and I both know that still work day jobs? Like a ton of that.
Yeah. Yeah, man, no shade on them though. That's just what you have to do.
That's what, I work day job. I literally just got done working. Like I do it all the time too, but it's like, I feel like once you reach a certain position, there's like smart things you can do and there's not smart things you can do to put yourself in a position of financial stability. Because I feel like
totally.
past the pandemic, it was very hard for me to see a lot of people who their livelihoods were touring, lost their full livelihood. Maybe they were here on a visa and then they couldn't do shit. And I felt like when we came back for a while, it was like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket of touring because like it may just not come to fruition or some shit just may happen that's totally out of your control.
Definitely. But yeah, you're preaching.
It's wild. This is why I have a podcast. I like to talk a lot about a lot of things, but it's lovely. Like I've never had someone in entertainment law on before, and I feel like you've almost been doing this for a decade. You're at the 9-year mark. That's insane. So where did you go to school?
I was at the University of Miami School of Law.
Okay, so that makes sense as to why you're in Miami. Miami's great. I had a lot of friends go to Miami and U of M and they loved it. And so did you get like immersed in the dance music scene when you were in Miami and you like fell in love with dance music, or like where did your love for that come about?
I mean, I've always been into this kind of music. Just even growing up, I was into, I guess, left field based music.
Mm-hmm.
I was a wook before wooks were a thing.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's hilarious. And I feel like definitely Orlando has a bit of that. I remember when I was in college, which was a bit after you, and the experimental bass lane was just like thriving in Florida and thriving in other places. And now it's huge. Now you've got, the Wakans of the world, and you've got Closey, and, you have kind of everything under the scope of bass music that is so vastly different when it gets into the subgenres. Is it cool on your end to work in this industry and like fight for the artists, I guess, on like a day-to-day basis? Like, is it something that you feel like you kind of thoroughly enjoy?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Like, I still love it. I still deal with the nonsense that everybody deals with because they love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great to be involved. It's great to be involved with this stuff. But like I said, I'm trying to help both sides, the creators and the labels and the managers. I have clients on both sides. And it's really a matter of just helping people fully understand, because the amount of education out there is so like lacking. Like, nobody knows what they're doing. People would be surprised how big of artists and big managers, they have no idea what they're doing. And people told me this when I was coming up, that I would be honest and say, I don't know the answer to your question. Let me look into it. People were like, wow, like you admitted you didn't know something? Because people will just bullshit you.
They bullshit you. They literally do. And then, especially again, putting myself in my own shoes, when you trust someone who has this like track record, and then they have like all of these artists underneath them, or they're on this agency, and then it's like, you're literally wrong. Like, you literally don't, like, you're not educated and you're acting as if you are educated. And like, I think that's, the entertainment industry is just fueled with people who have big egos. And like, a lot of people don't want to have like their ego checked by like, you don't know this, or admitting, hey, I'm wrong. But I feel like that's just, again, where the necessary growth needs to come from in order for things to change. Because, I know the organizations, I somewhat understand publishing. I would love to get a publishing deal. I somewhat understand sync. But if you had anything more than like a general question of what the definition of those things are, or if you put a contract in front of me, I'd be like, oh shit. I'd be like, like, I don't understand this. Do you go to YouTube University on this? Do you seek out someone like you to have a consult session? Like, what would you advise?
Yeah, if you're really going to deal and you have no idea what to do, yeah, try to find a lawyer to talk to them. There's no harm, and even if you don't have something on deck, there's no harm in reaching out to a lawyer and saying you're just trying to ask questions just for when the time does come. Even I get calls, 1 out of 100 is someone reaching out before they had an issue come up. Yeah. And they're always like embarrassed. So don't be embarrassed. It means you're actually thinking about this stuff. That's good.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good. And like, have you know, what makes a lawyer the right lawyer to go to? Like, what should you search for in terms of, is it a client list? Is it a track record? Is it going on their website? Like, how do you choose someone that you know is going to be the right person to represent you?
Yeah, I guess number one would be reach out to them directly, talk to them directly is number one, and see if they really understand what you're talking about. See if you even just vibe on the phone. And then ask your artist friends who are their lawyers. I'm sure even if you're a smaller artist, you have smaller artist friends, but maybe one of them has a bigger manager. Mm-hmm. They can look into it for you and get you some lists. And nobody should be gatekeeping their lawyers, because having the same lawyer as someone doesn't affect you at all.
I know. And it's like the gatekeeping of like everything is such a thing. It's such a thing. And it goes across the board. But yeah, it shouldn't be for legal facilitated situations that, we need help with. And I think that's it too, is just not rushing into things, taking a step back and saying, if they really want the record, they'll wait until I have a lawyer look over this. They'll do whatever, because I feel like I've been in situations where like labels have rushed me to return contracts, or I've been in situations where, again, you're chasing somebody for money and and you kind of look back in your mind, you're like, ooh, was this the right decision? Was this the best?
Yeah. If a label rushes you to sign a contract, that's a red flag, because there's literally no reason why it's a rush.
There's no reason why. There's literally no reason why.
Either they're going to put it out anyway, and then you'll just work on the paperwork once you get to it, or they'll just wait it. Like, that shouldn't be an issue.
It shouldn't be an issue. It should not be an issue at all. And in the world of, what you do, I kind of want to hop over to copyright and like copyright infringement, because I know you cover that stuff, correct?
Oh, sorry, just to get back to what you were just talking about, though.
Yeah.
Even specifically in dance music, you were talking about like legacy acts or managers who just made a play and now are at this point but really don't know what they're doing. A lot of them have also never had anyone tell them no. That's literally a lot of the problems I run into. No one's ever confronted them.
In what situation, though? Like, in what situation have they like never been told no? Just across the board?
Or just someone who bullies people into signing. Oh, you should sign. You need this by tomorrow. We need this by tomorrow. You need to sign it by tomorrow. Everyone signs it by tomorrow. It seems like you said you fell for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true.
So why would they change? But then a client eventually brings me in. I say, no, he's not signing by tomorrow. He'll sign when he signs.
That's so true. It like starts
People
with like
always be quiet. They're always quiet once I come in the picture.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because then it's you're a lawyer. Like, you're like legal representation. Again, the shit that I'm dealing with the hit and run, I'm like on the phone with the insurance company. Like, I'm going to get my fucking lawyer involved if you guys don't start the process of me getting my car fixed. And then it's like silence. And it's like, oh, we'll get the estimate over and we'll get you the insurance paper over and da-da-da-da. It's like, no one wants to deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's some of the value.
It is some of the value. It is definitely some of the value. And again, it just starts with the change of people in my position or up and coming acts or people who are just starting out and starting to get their track signed and starting to get scooped up by these groups or these labels, checking them a little bit. And if they're really doing what they say they're doing, they'll be fine with it.
100%.
They'll be fine with it. So copyright. Talk to me about copyright and understanding copyright and copyright infringement. And is this in the land of where samples lie, where you have to get samples cleared and you have to get things cleared to be in certain records?
Yes, it is. I think so specifically, is your question like, should you clear samples before putting out the music?
No, you definitely should clear samples before putting out the music. Like, what do you aid in the world of copyright?
Yeah, just helping clear samples. A lot of the time, it might be just reaching out to the right people. Lawyers usually have bigger networks just because they're working on so many deals across so many different clients.
Mm-hmm.
They just might know, and then that's a contract. It's a sample license agreement.
Yeah.
But I guess what we were just saying though, I actually think a lot of, if you're small or don't have a budget to clear the samples, if you don't have a budget for a lawyer to help you with this, I said people put it out without clearing samples and just let it ride.
Yeah.
This is not legal advice, but if you do it, most likely you're going to fly under the radar and nothing's going to happen. And then if something does happen, one of these companies will reach out. They say, you used our song without permission. You need to pay us a reasonable fee plus a reasonable percent because they want the money.
Yeah.
They don't win anything by just taking it down.
No, that's very true. And then you just give them a cut of whatever you're making. And if you're a small act, chances are you're seeing hardly little to nothing. And then you just kind of give them a credit and then you pay the fee and you go from there.
Exactly.
And I feel like unless it's something that like, you shouldn't be sampling, like that's going to get you like wildly caught or wildly in trouble. Like it's not like it's going to be something that is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Right. Like Prince and the Beatles and like the Rolling Stones, they're harsh. And they do takedowns. They're not going to sue you though. They'll just take it down.
Yeah. No, it would not be worth a suing to like an average producer sampling.
They're not suing they're not suing a bedroom dubstep producer.
Yeah, no, they're definitely not suing a bedroom dubstep producer. And then like, do you deal with things on both sides of it? Like you kind of go after people that have used samples in the wrong way or have, taken parts of a song or, it's hard saying there's like melody infringement, but I've seen that before, guitar chords doing, your regular 1, 3, 4, 5, and somebody says you copied me, even though it's done a million times before. I feel like that's where it could get like muddy.
So I'm seeing that a lot these days in hip hop specifically. Exactly what you're talking about.
Interesting.
Especially because, so in hip hop, a lot of collaboration is done by a melody, someone who specializes in making melody samples. They'll send it to another producer who will chop it up, add drums. Then you have a beat, and they might send it to a third person who's actually in the studio with the artist.
Oh, okay.
So they're like, going to use my loop. They're sending the same loop to multiple producers. So the same loop could end up on multiple songs. So all sorts of issues get in that game. And that's kind of like in the more so like the beat lease game, stuff like that.
Yeah, that could be a mess. Oh my God. Imagine,
that's a whole different
fucking Drake song and then like a fucking 21 Savage song comes out in the same key with the same melody with the same fucking loop. And then you have to get everybody involved. And I'm sure it doesn't get to that point into where it gets distributed and everything. But I guess is that how that works? Is they simply send out batches of samples? Like we would go on Splice and get samples or download somebody's samples pack and they see who actually wants to use it and utilize it. And then they pay them a fee and then they go to the next guy and they pay them a fee.
Yeah, people sell sample packs, $25 for a pack of samples, but the samples are just not royalty free.
Yeah. Okay.
So you still would have to clear it directly if you wanted to use it.
Got it. Yeah. I feel like that can just become like a shit show. I'm sure.
That's why these hip hop producers need a lawyer way more often.
Yeah, that's wild. And okay, so, going back from hip hop to dance, like you saying, okay, this is, it's kind of like the reason why, like you said earlier, asking why this is happening. Why are we making this decision? Why are we signing this contract? Like, why would it be time for an artist in the touring scene in the electronic world to get a lawyer? Period.
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. There's nothing stopping you from reaching out, trying to find a lawyer, asking your friends, I'm looking for a lawyer. Do you know anybody? Start that now. If you have extra time, if you're home for a couple of weeks, no reason not to. And even if you don't have anything on deck, you might need to be hiring employees in the future, hiring a VJ, hiring graphic designers for your stage visuals, all sorts of things that might come up in the future. How would the lawyer bill for that? How would that process typically go? How long would it take them to get back to you? Ask them those sorts of questions.
Yeah, that's like, it gets like my mind turning where it's like, when you are dealing with Because I've hired VJs, I hire media personnel, I hire photographers, I make sure everybody gives me invoices so I can write it off under the company and like all of that stuff. Like, are there other things that you kind of advise when that's happening on a larger scale?
Definitely. I mean, each situation, I mean, there's so many things to consider in each one. Like for the VJ or graphic designer who made your logo, could they put out merch with your logo? Maybe, if you only gave them the right to create your logo.
That's scary. Can you copyright your logo?
You can, but it just depends what's in the agreement you made.
There's so much. There's like so many, and it's like the little details. It's like you have the big conceptual things to think about, like the contracts with the labels. Like,
another thing that I kind of see a lot of in dance music specifically, kind of the opposite end of that spectrum. I've also been dealing a lot lately with bigger artists who have bigger lawyers, but they're having the big lawyers handle a single release and marking it up and going back and forth like it's a Bad Bunny record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure those artists are just on the road. They don't even know, but they probably wasted $1,000 marking up this to release on what is just to release on a small label, let's say.
And it's like not worth it.
It's not worth it. And they probably have no idea.
Yeah. And they have no idea. Well, that's where, again, muddy lines of a label saying, well, we're putting $10,000 into marketing for your record. But very often or very rarely have I seen people go, well, where exactly is that going? Like, are you doing pay to plays with DSPs? Are you paying for me to get in Forbes when we have a contact? Like, are you I feel like it's ramped up to a level at which you have to kind of take a back seat and go, I'm literally never going to see $1 or cent from any of this music.
Definitely. But specifically in dance music, a lot of it does, what you're saying is 100% true, but then it comes down to like, will they give you show opportunities also? Because then you just have to add that into the equation.
Yeah. And especially a lot of these artist-led labels have the touring attached to it. So it makes sense. It's like such a bigger picture to take into consideration than just, I'm signing this song for 50% and that's it.
Definitely. Yeah. A lot of people just don't take the time.
Yeah.
I would say what you said a million times already.
But it does take time to do your research and to do your due diligence and like understand the back end of things. And that's why like, do you do consults with other artists, or are you someone who like your platform is open for questions? Like, I know you're really active on Twitter. Like, are you kind of trying
most lawyers do free consultations, and they'll at least hear you out and tell you what they think about it and say like, here's what we would do next if I took you on.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that's worth it. That's definitely like a situation in which you can kind of benefit from it without signing up to spend thousands or hundreds of dollars. And I guess when somebody comes to you, obviously it's based on a case by case situation. You said that you bill per hour. Like, are you dealing with things that could cost a few $100s for a small act? Or are you dealing with things that are, you're not going to work with me for less than $1,000? Like, what's kind of the average within this space in, law groups?
So I don't have a size of deal or size of client threshold at all. If you can afford my rates for whatever it might be, that's the only threshold.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not turned off by saying, can you just review this one page thing for me for $100 or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not holding anyone back. But I think that is what is holding back most artists at a certain point. It's not worth paying $500 to review this EP label deal, because it's probably going to generate $500 in total, and then I made $0.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same either way.
It's kind of the
But I think I guess once you get past that point, once things are happening and money is coming in, that's when you should just really be thinking about it.
100%. 100%. And if there was like a few pieces of like solid, like 3 pieces of advice that you were going to give to that's an up and coming act or an act that's doing it that is listening to this podcast that hasn't done any of this shit and is like, oh shit, I should be paying attention to these things, what would you say?
So I think I'm repeating myself from the middle of the conversation, but number one would be don't hesitate to ask questions and send follow-ups.
Mm-hmm.
I just actually got someone paid from a EDM song from years ago because their old managers never actually handled it. So the old managers, his old managers told the client, his old managers told the artist, oh, this label's fucking you over. They're not paying, they're not responding to us. And I reviewed all the paperwork and stuff. They emailed one time. So, and then just gaslit the artist.
Yeah. And then, and it's just so shit. That's like, it's not the way that things should be, quote unquote, handled.
Right.
Is there anything else? Anything else that's just at the top of your mind that you're like, if you could do this one thing, it would gravely start to move you in the right direction for being more educated on the things that we talked about throughout the podcast?
Oh man, I'd say watch your podcast, watch other podcasts where they interview artists and they tell their stories and ask them questions about the business, because there's so much content out there. Like, it's boring, it's work, but you need to learn this at some point. And just the amount of people who I see get on this stuff before they got screwed over is just, it's so small. 2% of people reach out to lawyers before they got screwed over by something.
So wild. And I feel like, yes, podcasts like this may not be the most interesting, but from an artist's point of view, like, I feel like podcasts have really come into the space of like digestible learning. Like, I rather listen to a podcast than read a book. I'm all for a good book, but like, I'm not going to read a book on entertainment law. It's just not going to fucking happen. I'm not going to absorb it. I'm not going to obtain the information and I love where, you do have artists on, and I've had a million nightmare stories on the podcast of, I did this is what happened, but very rarely is like the solution or what could have avoided it actually discussed. It's more like, this went up in flames and I signed my whole discography over, or I got myself into this and then I owed them this, or I agreed to X, Y, and Z, but it's not like, oh, if I went back, I would have done it this way, or this is the way you should have handled it. So I feel like we answered a lot of those questions today, at least to give people like a basis of how to start educating themselves in this space so they don't make the same mistakes. Because I feel like what you said, at the end of the day, you have to look at what the record is bringing in, or whatever you're doing is bringing in, to justify the cost of bringing a lawyer onto the project. And if it cancels it out, it's kind of like, wait until a moment where you get to that point where the financial back end of it makes, or the profit makes enough sense. But you're never too small to like inquire about things and ask questions and do the necessary things. And I think that's a lot of like being an up and coming act, is just like, don't be afraid, what you said, to say no, to ask questions, to say, pause, let's like put a moment on this, and I'm going to get someone else to review this that I know. Like, our network, as you know, at the end of the day, like, it does become very small. The circle becomes very small once you're at a certain point. You know this person, who knows this person, who knows this person. So chances are, if you're at a point where you're signing track Deadbeats or Monster Cat or whatever, you know someone that could probably help you and aid you if you're unaware or unknowledgeable on how to handle the situation.
Definitely. And then one more piece of advice that popped in my head as you were talking was, don't blindly trust managers, lawyers, anybody. I think every artist needs to even look at their manager skeptically. Because, like, for example, say a touring artist they're talking about whether to bring on the bigger production for this tour or not. Your managers are probably going to say, do it, because in most management agreements, they don't stand behind the costs.
No,
the managers
they don't pay for shit, dude.
They get paid off the gross, so your managers might make money off your tour while you pay for the production, and you might end up with nothing.
Again, I'm a girl, I'm emotional. I get so heated over these things because it's like, you want shit to happen so bad, and you want the lasers, and you want the lights, and you want it to be everything, and you want more, but it's also about the journey. Like, when I sat down with Nostalgics a very long time ago, I think it was 2021, right after COVID, I went to apartment in LA and we did a podcast sitting on her couch. And she was like, I have these visions in my mind of what I want my shows to be like. And I want it all now, but I know I can't have it now. And then like when I do get it and when I do have it properly in a way where I'm not going to set myself up for failure, it's going to be so much better. And I feel like fans love seeing the growth of a project. Like they understand when you're playing at a 200 cap venue, your production isn't going to be like when you play SoFi Stadium. Like it's two totally different worlds. Or even going from like living in Denver, there's a pipeline of venues that you go through to grow as an artist. You start at Larimer, you go to Bluebird, or you go to Cervantes, and you go to Mission, then you go to Red Rocks. And all throughout that journey, like you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars where you're at. It's like having like the marathon point of view instead of the sprint to the end to make it look all cool and grand. But then, you know, you're using your day job to pay the commission, or you're using your day job to pay X, Y, and Z. And you're so right where the managers, and I think managers are like, they are very much like the unsung heroes and also like the unsung villains of the music industry, because you have this person who is giving up so much free time in like the beginning of your career. Like if you have an artist that is up and coming and an early act, and you have a manager that is working with them every day, building their, you know, career, they're working essentially for free. They're not getting a lot of money. They're maybe making anywhere from a few $100 to a few $1,000 every quarter. And it's nowhere by means enough for them to say, I'm only managing you. I'm making enough to pay my rent, pay my mortgage, you know, pay my bills, grocery, da, 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 da. So they want the best for you, and they want you to, you know, make more income year over year and keep growing and keep doing this. But all of these things at the end of the day, like you're paying for. So if you've got a $2,000 fee, but you're making merch for the show, and then you've got the 15% commission, and then you've got your travel, and then you got your hotel, and then you've got your food and your Uber and your Lyft, like you're walking away with maybe going negative.
Right. You shouldn't get the lasers for that show.
You shouldn't get the lasers for that show. Exactly. But like the lasers are like the cool thing and the selling point and like da 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 da. But you have to be able to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It sucks. I hate saying no. I hate it. It's something where I'm definitely getting better at it. I'm definitely like, okay, you're growing up, like you're putting your foot down, you're taking the emotions out of it. But it's just like the artist in me and the artist in like so many other women and men and every like act that I know in my circumference that, you know, we send music and we talk about shit going on. It's so much of like your life attached to it, because this is your life. People who are successful in this industry, it's like there are people who have balance, but it usually takes them a very long time to find that balance if they ever get to that point.
100%.
Yeah, if they ever get there. Thanks for letting me ramble on as we talk about entertainment law, you know. Fun stuff. Andrew, I really, or Adam, I really appreciate you coming on today. I feel like we talked about like a slew of topics. I can't wait to like edit this and put it all together. And I feel like, again, in the world where people see that one clip on Instagram and then they think they know everything, hopefully they will see some of these clips and be intrigued to listen to the podcast, learn more, you know, reach out to you. If there are artists that are listening to this that are like, yo, this is something I need to be doing, whether I'm going to tell my manager to reach out or I'm going to reach out on my behalf, what is the best way to like get in contact with you or someone who works underneath you to, you know, maybe start working together or book a consultation, all of that stuff?
Yeah, you can book a consultation through my website, acfreedmanlaw.com. Or find her on social media, AC Freedman Law, at me, message me. I'm easy to get in touch with. And I'm happy to help with anybody who hears this.
Yeah, the Twitter pops off. The Twitter is good. The Twitter is good information. It's like a spicy Twitter entertainment law account. It's great. It's great.
I gotta go and talk my shit on there.
Yeah. No, but it's wonderful. And it's like, again, it's like, you know, you have all of the accounts that are agents first managers and this first that. Like there has to be somewhere for like law and like all of this stuff that you see every day being like talked about transparently, because I think, again, just the more awareness, the more it's going to help people like me and people in my position and people who are much larger than me that haven't taken the time to really think about stuff, because it just moves so quick. Once the train is moving, it's like, this is your window of opportunity, go. And you put all of this stuff to the wayside and you say, I'll deal with it later. And you shouldn't.
Yeah. Could have said it better myself.
And you shouldn't. Well, thank you so much, Adam. I really appreciate you coming on today. Is there any last words you want to leave with us?
No, this was amazing. I think we covered a lot in this conversation.
We did. I'm pumped to go through it all and put it all together in a way that people can listen to it in like a very informative, conversational way. So it should be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today. I'm going to stop recording.